Welcome back, everyone. No video last week. We had some stuff going on with the business. I'll talk a little bit more about that in the video, but you can see here the start to finish on our large basement dig out here. You can see we're starting a little bit late into the project. I had some SD card issues at the beginning of this project, so I wasn't able to capture them digging out this first big wall with all the bricks, that brick pile there. So unfortunately, we're like a week or two in at this point. I think just a week. But you can see here they have a crawl space and then the basement side of this dig out. So we're coming in, we're digging down this crawl space area, and then we're also going to be digging down the basement area around 1.5 feet, just so there's more height in the finished basement. And you can see the guys doing that here. They're over there in the basement segment, just digging down to that final height. And then you can see we just got, since we have a larger basement here, we can have a bigger crew. So you can see at times we have 4 or 5 dudes with shovels. And this is really going to speed up just how quickly this dig out's going to go by. So you can see here in the crawl space area, they're just making quick work of all this excess material and dirt and just getting it out of there. And then you can see it gets pretty dusty, so the guys put on masks. So safety is very important on these jobs, so you have to take into consideration structural safety, like the building doesn't collapse. You got to take in respiratory when there's dust floating around and all that good stuff. So safety is very crucial on these jobs. You don't want anyone hurt or any kind of issues to happen from working. So safety is number one. But you can see here that they made quick work of that crawl space area. They're putting up the beams, right? So I was talking about safety before. This is going to support the structure above the home so it doesn't cave in and collapse. You can see that just like that, the crawl space is pretty much leveled out. So these jobs, like I said, when you have a bigger crew, tend to go pretty quick, especially when you're time-lapsing it. You'd be surprised. This is probably 6 months, not even 6 months, probably 3 months of footage, all condensed into 20 minutes. And yeah, the guys are moving. So this is a different angle showing the basement segment. So you can see they have all the frames and stuff up. This basement was never fully finished. So the homeowner has decided to finish the basement, but they want to bring it down and then, like we've seen with the crawl space, expand it a little bit. So coming in here, you can see the guys making quick work of that. They already dug this down. So like I said, some SD card issues. So we're jumping around quite a bit here. So the guys are digging footer holes right here on the left side. That's what's going on here. So they're going in underneath the pre-existing footers that are already existent on this home. They're digging those down like 3 feet, 4 feet, and then they're going to pour a little bit of an L-shaped footer. And that L shape just helps to resist against the pressures of the outside dirt, so it doesn't push inwards on the home. And then I haven't really talked about this before, but there's 2 different kinds of footers that we can use. There's those L shape, and the L goes into the home, and then there's also a T shape. We don't really do T shape because those are more kind of intense, like if you know that the soil is going to be shifting a lot, we'll do a T shape. But here in Denver, Colorado, it's pretty stable soil, so L shape does perfectly fine. And then switching the angles up here, you can see that the crawl space is gone. Now it's just an entire basement. So like I said, quick work in and out. When you have crew of 5, 6 people, things start to move pretty quickly. But you can see here over on the back side, they got those footers like I was talking about. And then it's very important that we sequence these footers. And what I mean by that is we do every other footer hole. So that way the building doesn't cave in on itself, because there's a giant hole underneath the wall there. So something is always supporting something in the home. That's very important. Switching back over here, we're going to be able to see more of this going on. So you can see the guys just hopping in and out, getting all this dirt out. And it's surprising just how much dirt we're able to pull out of these jobs. It's quite incredible, honestly, because these little footer holes, like you wouldn't think, oh, there's just a little footer hole. But when the guys get to digging these out, this turns into a huge pile pretty fast. And this is what I'm talking about. When the guys get moving, you can see them bringing in the Quikrete, starting to pour all these bad boys. Here's a different angle of that. The guy's coming in, getting rid of the dirt too. And then another useful thing is with all this room, you can have multiple crews doing different things, right? So we have an excavation crew right now. You can see this guy, he's got the wheelbarrow. His job is to really just get the dirt over here and then shovel that into the conveyor belt while the other guys pour the footers. So there's this something's always happening. Something's always, things are getting done at the same time, which is really good. And that also helps to speed everything up. So you can see this here, they're mixing the Quikrete and the wheelbarrows. And then this is a really nice technique because they're able to move this wherever, and they can be pretty mobile with the concrete. Then they pour this into the footers, and then once the footer slab is poured, so the footer is poured in 2 different pours. There's a footer slab, the kind of like level horizontal bit on the ground. Think of it like an L, it's the base of the L. And then once that's cured a little bit, they're going to add in a form that's going to do the wall segment of the footer. So it's poured in two separate chunks. You didn't really get a good angle of that. You could kind of see it. This is the one thing about jobs like this too, is there's always something obscuring your view. So that's a little bit unfortunate. No matter where I put a camera, you won't be able to see everything, but you get the idea. And then you can see in those footer holes, you can catch a little glimpse of that blue stuff. So that's vapor barrier that's going to stop any moisture from entering the home throughout the basement's lifetime. That way it just saves on, water damage. You don't want any moss, mold, or anything like that, or just cracking from moisture happening. So vapor barrier does a really good job of preventing anything like that. And then my favorite part, if you look all the way in the back, you can just see the massive mountain of quickcrete that we use for these jobs. And quickcrete's really nice just because, like I said, it's very mobile and we don't have to wait on like a pump truck or anything like that. And especially when they're footers, because the footers, you got to sequence them and then you pour them at different times. You can't do them all at once. So it's a pump truck logistically wouldn't really work that well, just because he'd be over there like he'd pour for 10 minutes, take a break for 30, pour for 10 minutes. It's not very economical. So quickcrete is definitely the way to go on the footers. Now, when it comes to the actual pouring of the floor, a pump truck, of course, just because you get it all done in one go. So there's that. Switching angles again here, you can just see how open it's starting to get. And this is what I'm talking about too. Once it's open, there's plenty of room to store stuff. There's plenty of room to walk around without getting in each other's way. So this is the point of the job where things start to speed up even more, just because a lot more can happen at the same time. You can see here we got one of the guys shoveling dirt out, and then the other guys are working on the footers. So yeah. And then this gets pretty repetitive for the next couple minutes, just because they're just going to be doing a lot of footer work. So what about last week? So last week was, if you might have caught it, we missed a video, we missed an upload. And that's just because we had a lot of stuff going on. We had our pump truck stolen, which is not fun, never a good thing when something's stolen. So we were pretty heated about that. So we spent some time looking for that, filing police reports, all that good stuff. But what can you do, So we had that happen to us last week, as well as some other stuff, logistical things. But for the most part, we're back up and running this week. So I felt well enough to make a video, going over our final dig out. And then this is the last dig out for a couple months, actually. We don't have anything for probably till February or March. So you expect to see some different content on this channel, whether that's pump trucks, because we did manage to get another pump truck, bless. So expect some pump truck content coming up here in the near future, as well as just some other stuff, maybe some foundation work, all that stuff. We're really trying to expand what we do here at Gold to Concrete, so there's going to be a lot of opportunity to share different aspects of the concrete world with you guys on this channel. So we're really excited and looking forward to that a lot. So if you want to see more of that, drop a comment. Tell us what you want to see from the concrete world. It helps us a lot in terms of catering the content to you guys, and we're not just shooting darts into the void. We can kind of hit some targets when you guys leave comments like that. So that'd be awesome. But with that said, we're going to jump back into the time lapse here, explain it a little bit. So you can see the guys have started to move onto this right wall here on the right side. So these footers are larger just because the pre-existing foundation of this building was set on the crawl space height, right? So since we got rid of the crawl space, that also meant we brought down the floor roughly maybe 4 or 5, even 6 feet in some areas. So that means that the guys have to do a larger footer to make up for that dirt that's missing underneath the foundation. So you can see that these footers are way larger than the previous ones, those little 2-foot, 3-foot footers. These are like 4 or 5, like I said. So the guys are doing that right here. Same process though, it's that L shape. You're going to pour your footer slab first, and then you're going to follow that with a form, and then pour the vertical part of that footer. And once it's cured, you're going to take off the form, and you got a finished footer. But yeah, you can see same process as the one before. You got vapor barrier in there. We have rebar that goes in there as well, so it's more, it's got some beef to it. It just won't cave in with some dirt. But yeah, looking really good. We're probably halfway through the total project here, and you can see during this part nothing really changes. It's a lot of the same. You're gonna get rid of dirt, you're gonna pour some footers, get rid of dirt, pour some footers, all that good stuff. And then the only unfortunate thing with these last 2 jobs is there's been a lot of waiting on other contractors. So here at the halfway mark, I want to say when all the footers were finished, we spent like 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, maybe even a month. I can't remember exactly, but it was a decent amount of time that we were waiting on other contractors to come in and finish their plumbing, their wiring, the heater and stuff, getting rid of all this stuff in here, just because we're not paid to do that, so we don't do that. Plus, we don't know you know, we don't got the plans for that, and we're not electricians. So yeah, so a lot of waiting on this job in the previous one, which is a little bit unfortunate, but even then the guys kick ass and get stuff done pretty quickly, as you can see here. So this is a really good angle of the footer, so you can see exactly what I was talking about before. So they poured that footer slab, they put up the footer form, now they're going to pour that into there, and then boom, you can see that right here. They take their buckets and they pour it into that little hole at the top, and then once it's cured they rip it off, and then you got a footer wall. You can see here too, the guys got some fans up, so that's also very important, especially in the summer. This was a summer job, so it can get pretty damn hot down there depending on the days. So it's really good that you have circulation and ventilation going on. I'm pretty sure they had the windows open at all times when they're down there, you know, just letting air in and out. And that's really important too when you're first starting this project and you're moving all this dust around. All that particulate's going to get in the air and just kind of float around in there for a while, and if you don't have good airflow, it's going to be in there for a long while. So that's why we have the guys wear masks at some point when there's not really good circulation. We don't want that getting in their lungs. But yeah, pretty easy process altogether, I'd say, for doing a basement dig out. There's just some key things you have to keep in mind, you know, like safety, structural integrity, all that good stuff. But for the most part, super simple process. And then the more people you have, like I said, the easier it is. Good luck doing this with you and your son. This is a lot of work for 2 people. Even 1 if that matter. So switching angles here, now you can see the left side of the basement. So pretty much the guys are just wrapping around doing footers the entire way around the basement. And then there's no really process to this either. It's kind of just, you know, the area you have more access to and is easier. It's the one you start with. So as you can see, the footers on the right side we had the most access to at the beginning, so that's why we did those ones first. There's really no particular reason to do an area first unless there are structural reasons why, but for the most part it doesn't really matter which side you start on unless you more quickcrete coming in through the window there. You can see that. Love this stuff. Can't stress that enough on these basement digouts. And then you can see here, just for the small amount of footers that we're doing, you can see just how big the pile's gotten. Like, right? Like, where'd that pile come from? It's these tiny little footer holes, and then we have a mountain of dirt in the middle of the room. Kind of amazing. So here you can see them doing a little walkthrough with the contractor, homeowner, all that stuff. Here's where the electricians come on. So we're waiting for these guys to come in, take some stuff out, do some wiring, all that good stuff. And then once they're gone, we're able to come back in, do our thing. All that good stuff. Waiting on them again. So you can see here we're starting to do some stuff in the back right here. So some plans changed a little bit. So we're gonna so there's another crawl space, like the first one over there where the guys have that blue stuff all the way in the back. So they're gonna saw cut that brick wall and they're gonna add in like a little cubby hole, whether that's for a water heater or some kind of unit, electrical unit, not entirely sure, but they're going to saw cut into there and kind of just make a little inlet for that stuff. So you can see that going on right now. And this is what I'm talking to. Plans usually change on these kind of jobs, so we might think that we're getting near finished on something, but then they want to expand somewhere or do something different somewhere else. So that can be a little bit unfortunate, but we make it work. So you can see the guys coming in here with an even bigger conveyor belt. So this thing's going to really speed up the workflow. You can see that here. They're just going to throw all their dirt in there and get it out of here. And then just a little bit more on the logistics of our job, if you're curious. So we have the guys on the inside, right? And then we usually have one guy on the outside. So, right, just because that dirt's getting thrown outside doesn't mean it magically disappears, right? We need some kind of logistics or transportation to get it out of there. So usually the crew will have one guy on the outside with a wheelbarrow, or depending on how big the job is, a skid steer, to move all that dirt that's being pumped out from the conveyor to a trailer or a truck or whatever, and then that'll be hauled off to a dump site or our yard where we can use that dirt at a later date. So we're jumping a lot around here. The camera keeps changing. So coming back to this one, this was that little extension I was talking about. So you can see up at the top right of this saw cut, there's a crawl space back there. That was that crawl space I was talking about. But the guys are going to just come in here and dig out a little cubby hole for this new little closet, I guess would be the best term for this thing, like a little closet room. And then you can see that. So since they want to keep it structural, right, so we're just going to use cinder blocks for the walls, you know, bricks, cinder block bricks. Nothing too fancy here. So since this is just like a retaining wall inside the basement, it doesn't have to be too structural. It's not really supporting the weight of the home or anything like that. So we can get away with using cinder blocks with some rebar in it, and then pouring concrete to stiffen it up. And then back to this wide view, you can see here just how open the basement is compared to the start, right? 15 minutes ago when you were looking at this, it was pretty hectic. There was walls everywhere. There was a whole entire crawl space. And then now you can see just how open it is in the paths leading throughout the basement. So this makes it a lot easier for the guys. And then you can see that was really cool. So when we have multiple conveyors on a job, we can get away with doing stuff like that, right? You can kind of link them together. And then say for some reason, if there was a hole in this basement, right, like a cavern, there's just a pit, right? So the guys could use 2 conveyors to go across and kind of like manage the flow of this dirt. So the conveyors are super helpful on these jobs. Really speeds everything up. We've seen videos on the internet of people using buckets, you know, they're bucketing out dirt 1 bucket at a time. And let me tell you, fuck that. That is not the way to do these. If you want to hurt yourself, you do the bucket way. And if you want to take 2 years to dig out your basement, you do the bucket way. But if you want to get stuff done fast, conveyors are the only way to go. And then we do get a lot of questions on why don't we have like a mini skid steer or like a mini excavator down there, and that's just because there's a lot more work in terms of the prep phase. And then it's also, you can't be very precise with those things down here, because if you accidentally like hit a beam or something like that, that's not very good. So those things are kind of a liability, you know. And then hand digging is probably the safest way to go about it. It's really just a safety thing at the end of the day. You know, it's very safe to just hand dig. Like, you're not going to have a guy swing his shovel and then tear down 3 beams. All right, so that's why we don't use those. And then switching up here, you can see a lot just happened. The guys just took down all the temporary pillars holding up the building above and replaced them with the metal ones. So those are the final pillars in the home. If you have a basement, you probably are familiar with these. All new homes pretty much have these metal pillars holding up homes in the basements. So that's what this is. And you can see with all that stuff removed, just how big this basement is compared to the beginning now. You can really just see the volume of this room, which is really cool. This is my favorite part, when just you can see how much space is opened up. It's pretty much just a second home underneath your home. Like, the foot space has doubled underneath them. So this is a really, if you don't want to move or anything like this is a really good thing to consider as a homeowner, just because, you know, it's probably a little bit cheaper than buying a new home and you get all the new space of a new home. So it's a really good consideration, especially if you love where you live, you know, and you don't want to move, but you want more room. This is a great way to do that. But coming in over here, you can see they're digging a little trench. That's going to be the perimeter drain. So the perimeter drain pretty much just takes all the moisture that seeps up out of the ground over the years and then just takes it to a sump pit. That way it can be drained and it doesn't go into the actual basement. So that's just another moisture preventer. Really essential to just keep in your basement in tip-top shape. And then you can see here how they kind of like, it's a perimeter drain, but it's not exactly on the perimeter. We got a question about this a couple of weeks ago. And pretty much the reason for this is just because those footers are L-shaped, like I mentioned before, right? So we can't put them right up next up to the walls because there's concrete there, right? So we just kind of offset them a little bit where there's dirt and not concrete. But you can see that going on here. So this is a different contractor. This is a plumber coming in here. He's doing plumbing. This isn't us. But this is what I'm talking about. Usually when other contractors are in here, we got to wait on them. So however long this dude takes to do his plumbing is usually how long we're waiting to do our part of the dig out. So a little bit unfortunate, but not too big of a deal. Switching angles here, we're just going to repeat that same process, but you're going to be able to see it from a different angle. We're going to dig that trench, get that perimeter drain in, get everything looking nice. And then this is a really key part as well, is the vapor barrier, right? So we had the vapor barrier underneath the footer walls, but now we have it underneath the final slab too. So this is also important. Lots to do here in terms of keeping moisture out. That's very important if you want to consider the longevity of your basement. Super vital. But you can see here they're doing this, and then we had some contractors come in, so they dirtied up our vapor barrier. You love to see it. So the guys had to sweep that up real quick. But yeah, there you go. You can see the plumbing is surrounded by this kind of like those tubes over there in the back, those yellow tubes. And then we keep that just so, you know, you can kind of adjust the plumbing a little bit down the line and it's not like set in stone for where that plumbing is. Switching these angles here, it's going to be the vapor barrier again, just this time from this angle. But yeah, we're getting really close to the final product here. You can see just how open and wide this space is now, especially when it's flat. You can really tell how big the space is when it's flat. Like when there's junk and stuff in here, it doesn't really do it justice, but once it's flat and you can just see how like clean it is, it's a whole new basement. But yeah, there we go, guys. This part of the job is usually the fastest. This probably takes a week from the perimeter drain to vapor barrier to final pour, just because it's a super simple process if we're not waiting for anyone. Especially when you got 5 dudes down here doing it super, super fast. And then I can't wait to show you guys. We finally got a pump truck. So on this job, we had our pump guy come in and yep, here you go, setting it up, and they're going to pour the floor. And then you'll see how fast this is. Look, they're in, pouring the floor, and they're out. Boom, just like that. And the basement is finished on our end, that is. They still got to come in and frame it, make it look nice, put some carpet in there, all that good stuff. But for the most part, the structural bit of this basement is completed, and you can see just the before and after. It's an incredible feeling. It's always fun to see this part just because you go from this like super old, cramped space, kind of gross, kind of disgusting, into this really clean, just like fun room, honestly. Like if the homeowners didn't even want to finish this, they got plenty of storage down here now. But that's going to conclude this episode. Hope you guys enjoyed. Be on the lookout for new content, some pump truck stuff, some foundation stuff, all this good stuff. We're really trying to expand what we're doing here at Gold's Concrete. Let us know in the comments down below if you enjoyed the video. Go ahead and subscribe and like. Thanks for joining us, guys. We'll see you next time.